So I'll try to break this down about as simply as possible. I have a quick little graphic that'll first go over the age groups, which is the first toughest part for everyone to kind of understand, because the way that it's named, it's pretty much across the board. We have Kid Kart, 5 to 7 years old, pretty much a club or regional series only class. The WK Man Cup calls itself a national and has a Kid Kart class in it, which is where any parent that wants to travel more than probably a 4 to 6 hour radius ends up going. But that's the entry level class. Some clubs don't even end up scoring them in terms of results. Every kid gets a trophy. At this point, this is just a great entryway. Kids can start driving these karts and practicing at 3 to 4 years old with the size of them. It's a size smaller kart, runs a 50cc motor. Miami has the Miami M1 Bambino. A lot of clubs in Texas and a few other areas, I think in California, also run a Honda GX50, which I've heard a lot of good things about. Briggs, with their 206 engine, has a super restricted version that they have for Kid Kart setup, which is the fastest one of all the Kid Kart motors, I believe, by a couple seconds. And then you have the original Kid Kart motor. I won't say original, like way back in the day, but at least the motor that's been before those three and is still around and still used at certain races, which is the Comer C50, 51, and 52. And that's where you guys get in. Then you have the rest of the age groups here, where we have micro, which is 7 to 10 years old, 8 to 12-year-old is mini, 11 to 15 is junior. A lot of the classes call them senior at 14 plus, but to kind of help for newer fans as well, to distinguish the levels at each class. And with some of the series calling them pro classes, I usually will take out the word senior and put pro for X30, which is the 125 class we'll get to in a minute, and for the shifter guys. And then you have masters, and sometimes you CKNA, which is the leading four-cycle organization in the country that runs 206 racing. We'll get to the engines in a moment. They have a legends class, which is like 50 plus. Some clubs will do that stuff too. The difference with the masters is you're not racing kids that are going to be in the go-kart every single week. You're racing guys that have a 9 to 5, probably want to go to work on Monday. And in theory, they don't race as aggressive, but we have seen some aggressive stuff in the masters classes quite a bit over the years. Those guys throw haymakers sometimes. So, but that's the basic nomenclature when it comes to the class and age groups. And then there's really, in my opinion, where we're at with the U.S. right now, we've got kind of 4 tiers when it comes to engines and really levels. If you want to go D, B, C, B, A, or really CBA and kind of 2 tied at the A level for pro classes, which is the X30 and the shifter. So when you go to the base of the pyramid, you go with the slowest motors, which is your Briggs 206, and Tillotson has the Tillotson 212, which is the comparable version of a Briggs 206 engine. These are 4-cycle engines, which is a different type of motor. That's why the number is higher. It's the number of cc's that the motor puts out, but they only put out about 9 to 10 horsepower. It's meant to be cheaper. You can only run the packages between $800 to $1,000. You can obviously run them at national races. CKNA has national races, but it's not the exact same type of national, I would say, as what we have at the USPKS, the SCUSA, the rock races. And not a knock on it, but it's more of a grassroots national. eKarting News dubbed it as kind of the SCCA runoffs of karting, because it's meant for this entry-level grassroots motor, this economy motor, budget racer motor. And you have now, because the numbers have gotten so big at that event, you'll see a lot of big-name guys go and run it. Brandon's going to run it. Brandon Jarskak will run again this year. Paulie ran it last year. More guys will run. And you see some different manufacturers with them too, but that's the easiest one to start. Then you go up in the budget and you go to the kind of the middle level, and that's your 100cc racing. So that's the KA classes we talk about. It's again a 2-stroke motor, so the cc's are lower, but it's more than double the horsepower, 22 horsepower, a little more than double the price. You also have a little bit of a more expensive maintenance period, but this is a good happy medium. For a lot of clubs, the best way I think to do the class structure, if you're really going to focus in, besides letting guys bring out shifters and 125s and whatever go-karts they want to practice on, or just run because they want to go faster. When you look at the club level and the best way to kind of get in, I think a two-prong structure doesn't put too many weights on the classes, because you have micro and mini or a combined cadet class. You have your Kid Kart class. You have junior, senior, and sometimes a master. So that's already 5 classes off one engine grouping. And so having 206 or Tillotson and then having 100cc kind of leg up, so that way you can kind of boot your faster, more experienced, maybe higher budget drivers up to the 100cc class, so you still have a good kind of novice, entry-level, or budget economy classes like a BA, semi-pro, and pro, if you want to call it, however you want to say it, for the club level. I think that structure works really, really good. When you add in a bunch of other different motors and a bunch of classes, you kind of dilute your numbers a little bit. There's nothing wrong with having them if your club racers want them, but if you're starting a brand new club, the best thing to do is to start with the base of the pyramid. And then as that class grows to 25 to 30 and above, then you can split off your numbers a little bit by adding the 100cc classes. And a prime example of that over the last few years has been the guys up at Pittsburgh International Race Complex. They've been a 206 only series for the last 4 seasons, regrowing the club scene over there. And this year they're adding 100cc classes, which hopefully will attract not only drivers that aren't already at the club level, that are 100cc drivers in the region, but hopefully some of their top 206 drivers to graduate to the 100cc classes, go a little bit faster with the higher horsepower. Hopefully they're able to afford it or they have some really good incentive programs and contingency programs to get them into it. And that works out really good. It's a good 2-prong system. And you start to see the 100cc stuff at regional racing. You see the 206s at every regional series and then the CKNA Nationals. But it really works better to kind of keep some of those motors away from the national stuff, because as we've heard on the show all the time, all this focus and money is in the X30 and the pro shifter classes, and everyone complains about Norberg's motor and the shifter guys complain about each other's KZ motors. You don't want a national motor coming down to a club race and finding its way there. So I'm always a big proponent of having somewhat different tiered classes when it comes to that. And then moving from the mid-level 100cc, you get to the 125cc classes. These are only junior and senior only for 100 and the 125. There's a 60cc cadet that's the mini and the micro Swifts. So it's kind of B and A with 206, and then with the mini the IME Swifts or the mini Rocks. But then the 125 classes have a junior and a senior and a master. That's your pro classes for the single speed. It's the fastest we go in the U.S., which is 30 horsepower. There's some higher horsepower formats they run over in Europe and a little bit different structure, but we're just talking in the North America, especially with the U.S. right here. And so that's the top. So that's what we call the pro class. And because it's offered at all 15 of the U.S. majors that we follow, the Rock Florida Winter Tour, you could replace the Rock Winter Tour with the Challenge of the Americas on the West Coast, have your 3 either way. So you could say 18 total, but not a lot of guys run all 18. Most people run 15. They run the SCUSA Winter Series, the Rock Winter Tour, U.S. Pro Kart Series, SCUSA Pro Tour, Rock Vegas, SCUSA Supernats, and the Miami Grand Nationals. The X30, the 125 Pro Senior class is at all 15. So it made it easy for us to follow it. It also, in my opinion, has the most depth of talent, more than the shifter. Not that they're better or worse than the shifter drivers. We don't have as many shifter drivers that can run up front with AJ Myers and Danny Formel right now compared to what we have in the 125 class. So from a marketability, it was easier for us to go to. But top of the pyramid when it comes to European karting, and the hardest kart to drive, the fastest kart to drive, is the 125 shifters. There's also a 175cc option with IAME that they kind of detune to run with the 125s. But you normally go to 40 to 45 horsepower. You're obviously a gearbox class, which all those classes before are single speed. So you actually have to shift up and down in a 6-speed sequential gearbox. The engine pricing, you can see, skyrockets all the way up to what AJ was saying was about an $8,000 fully blueprinted KZ motor, which is an open manufacturer class that allows all the ones to compete. And again, just like the X30 stuff is listed there, I think both of those don't really work well when you have them at the club level, at least with like a heavy emphasis on it. You can have those classes offered, but really it's better, I think, to focus and put a lot of promotion to the 206 Tillotson and then the KA stuff. And then, when you have these guys with the higher, budgets and the more emphasis, I mean, this is better suited for regional racing to warm up and then national racing. And I won't count GoPro Motorplex or Newcastle or LAKC as club racing because those guys are so big, they can be almost really regional racing.